Hi everyone, it's Nicole Nowosad and I'm here with Jillibean Soup with a quick tutorial video on the Mix Media Stencils and Happy Hues paints. The project I'll be working on today is a mini album using these products. However, the same techniques could be very easily used on scrapbook layouts, cards, or a lot of other things. The supplies I'll be using are the Mix Media Stencils and Masks, some Happy Hues paints, pattern paper, alphabets, tag stickers. You'll also need some strong double-sided adhesive. I'm using 1x3L adhesives, a paintbrush, a craft mat. You'll definitely want some baby wipes, modeling paste, and a credit card or something you can apply that with. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and purchased like an old little baby book here from the dollar store. I didn't have a chipboard album on hand and I wanted something that was thicker. So I just went and grabbed a book from the dollar store and I'm just going to cover it with paper. So you can see I've just added a lot of double-sided adhesive strips and I've peeled off the one layer and I've just gone ahead and laid it flat onto a piece of cardstock and now I'm trimming off around the edges. For this project, I'm using a lot of lighter colored papers from Jillibean Soup as well as some cardstock just because I know I'll be using the templates, the stencils and the masks, and I really want that to be the star. So I'm using some lighter patterns so that the masking and stenciling shows through a little bit better. So I'm varying through pattern paper and cardstock in my book. And as you'll be able to see, the book doesn't exactly lay completely flat when I'm done, and that's because I've added the paper over the crease line in the album. I don't mind it that way, but if you'd prefer, you could always just trim down the size of the page. It would just take a little bit longer. You can also see I'm using a lot of this adhesive, and that's because I want this book to really hold up really well. So don't be shy with your adhesive if you think it's going to be manhandled, like I know it will be in my house. Now I'm just trimming along the edge with a craft knife and then some scissors, just until I get everything kind of trimmed off. On the front of my book, I actually made a bit of a boo-boo, as you can see here, and I didn't line the cardstock up flat. So I just cut another piece and I ended up stitching around the front of it, and then I just added that to the front of my album, and I'm just going to trim that off as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is work on the cover of my album. And with that, I'm going to be using some modeling paste. There's several different kinds out there, but the one I'm going to use today is by Liquitex. And all I've done is added some Happy Hues, this is the Amiable Aqua color, to that modeling paste, and it's just colored it. So it's really easy to take any of the Happy Hues paints and create your own textured modeling paste. So I'm just layering this simple dot stencil over top of my cardstock in the front of my book. And I'm just going to layer this here on so you can see. And this will create mint green type of polka dots to the front of the white cardstock. And as you can see, it's really, really simple. You just take, this is an old room key from a hotel, or if you have an old gift card or credit card that you're not using, you just simply layer it on. And you can see it adds little tiny polka dots on top of the white cardstock. It's really simple to clean up the modeling paste as well, and the stencil. Now, although that looks nice, you're probably going to cringe right now, but I decided I wanted to have a tone-on-tone type look instead. So I just rubbed that off with my card here, and I added a little bit more. And I wanted this to be a bit of a messy kind of texture, so it looked uneven and kind of artsy. So I just took that same colored modeling paste with the Happy Hues paint again, and just added a thin little layer, just so the background wasn't so quite as white as I had thought I would want it initially. And then I'm going to let that set aside to dry. And the front of it, as you can see, is there's darker spots and lighter spots, and that's kind of what I wanted. So I let that dry, and then I came back in with that same stencil again, and I just applied more modeling paste right over top again. So again, the color, I had that sitting there for a little while. It maintained the color really nice. And I'm just going to add it in different areas all over, and then some areas here you can see are going to be thicker than others. And I'm just going to go ahead and rub the edges here with my fingers to clean up any of the rough spots. And then I'm going to set that aside to dry and clean off my stencil. You can see it's really easy. I just use a lot of baby wipes and I just rub it off a few times and it comes off so clean. The stencil itself is really, really sturdy. It's not flimsy at all. So you can flip it over and clean it off really well. And then I usually take a dry paper towel just to get any of the wetness off from the baby wipe. And that's it. So we're ready to go. Alright, so I'm just going to dry this off with my heat gun, mostly because I'm impatient. but also because I want to work in the rest of the album and I don't want to smudge any of that modeling paste. It does take a little bit of time to dry, so this is one of those projects where if you don't have a lot of time, you want to do little bits at a time, this would be something great to do. So you could do the cover, for example, and then set it aside. So my modeling paste is dry, and these are the masks and stencils that I'll be using. And I'm going to actually use the Yummy Yellow paint for the inside part of my book. And for this one here, the Love You, I think this one is they call it a mask. I'm just holding it down with my finger, and I'm adding a good amount of paint, actually, right over top of the mask area. And then I'm slowly tapering off as I get nearer to the edges of the mask and my page. And now my paintbrush still has some yellow paint on, but it's fairly dry. And so I'm just kind of dry rubbing in an artsy sort of way along some of the edges of my book here. And I'm just going to add a little bit more in some spaces around the mask that I think aren't doing really great. Once I have that all down, I just take a thin little paper piercer. You could use a needle, something thin, and just lift that right off. And I'll use my heat gun to set it again, only because I want to continue working in the album right away. But again, if you had time, you could do this and set it aside and let it dry and continue on. Dries pretty quickly, actually. It only took about 2 or 3 minutes to dry with the heat gun. Didn't take a lot of time. So now I'm going to grab this stencil here, and as you can see, it doesn't reach quite to the edges of my page. So I'm going to add some paper around that just to kind of cover up the edges of my book, because I don't want to have a line underneath the Thankful. And I'm actually going to use some spray mist for this here. That's in the same kind of mint color as that amiable aqua color. And then I'm going to add some aqua paint to the other parts of the page. I'm only using the mist because I truthfully just wanted to try it out and see how great it would work. And it does work pretty good. I added too much mist, I think, and it did bleed underneath the stencil a little bit, but it still looks really nice in the end. You can see the word thankful is pretty crisp, and that's what I wanted for this part of the book. Then I decided, I'm just going to clean these off here, and then I decided that I wanted to add a little bit more paint underneath that thankful word, just because it was kind of too stark for what I had thought I wanted. And like I said, that amiable aqua color matches really well. So I'm going to go back in now and just add a little bit more of that paint. So in the middle there is where I have my modeling paste, so I just added some amiable aqua, and my amiable aqua is pretty thick. And I'm just adding a small amount to my brush and dry brushing like I did with part of that Yellow Love You page. Just adding a tiny little bit of water to thin it out a little bit. And some paint, and I'm going to just paint in the corner here, kind of like I did on the last page. And that's just to kind of bring some color, otherwise it would be pretty white on the background. And as you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but it dries pretty quick. As I'm going with the dry brushing, it's basically dry. Now around the outer edges of your album, you may have some rough areas from that modeling paste. And I also had some from the paper that I may not have trimmed as close to the edge of the chipboard album as I'd like. So I'm just taking my sanding tool here and just kind of buffing the edges and polishing it so it's all even and there's no rough spots. All that's really left to do now is fill the inside of the album. You've got all the pages mostly done. So I've just printed out this printable here from Jillibean Soup and cut it on my silhouette. And I'm just adding some foam adhesive to the front. And then I've gone ahead here, as you can see, and added some bean board alphas and some alpha bean stickers. And I've layered just right over top of that amiable aqua modeling pasted background. And I really like how it's turned out here. That amiable aqua color is like a pretty mint color mixed with that white of the modeling paste. Inside the album, the possibilities are endless. And for this page, I used one of the 3x4 printable journaling cards from this month. I also used some of the Polaroid die cuts that you'll find throughout the whole rest of the album. And I've added some wise words and this vellum heart and some of the stampable doilies throughout the book as well. I found that keeping some of the embellishments similar throughout the pages helped keep the scheme all the same. You can see those fun new adhesive sequins are just the perfect little touch of bling, even in an album such as this. Just to add a little touch to the center of those flowers makes them just stand out even more. And if you want to add journaling but your handwriting's not great like mine, I used some of the little mini alphabet stickers to finish off some of those spots of journaling in my book. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial video and picked up a couple new things that you'd like to use in your projects using our masks, stencils, and paints. And as always, we thank you for stopping by the Jillibean Soup blog, and stay tuned for lots of inspiration from our team.